topics. We had a lot of people in the group, which was really exciting, and there's lots of really awesome questions. So if I am going too fast or you need me to see me do something again, just drop it in the Q&A, and I will address it. So please ask questions. That's the best part of this whole thing. Okay. I'm Sydney Watkins. I'm design supervisor and showroom manager at DBI in Lansing, Michigan. I went to Kendall College of Art and Design. I'm a certified walls specialist and project manager. Oh, I work for a Hayworth dealership. So some of my brag moments, I think everybody needs to get better about bragging about themselves and their team. So my most proud achievement is that my spec accuracy rate is 99.993%. And I have it quantified and with data, so I measure down to the penny. And actually, I have one of the worst accuracy rates in my entire team. I make more errors than everybody. Last year, we won a national account for $45 million, which is helping us make it through COVID, so very proud of that. And then I'm a very proud member of the Hayworth Dealer Product Council and collaborating with the manufacturer to create new awesome products. So part of what I'm talking about today is really just kind of the journey from where we were when I started working here and where we've grown our team to, and how we got to that success. So to start at the beginning, it was 2016. I was just out of college. I had zero experience. I was like 24 years old, and I started working here at DBI. When I started, there was 13 designers and 76 years of experience. By the end of 2016, our team had $53,000 in errors. By a year later, over half that team had left, and we had to hire some brand new people that were just barely less experienced than I was. And we also lost both of our supervisors that year. So some crazy reason they put me in charge, and I really think it's because nobody else wanted the job, and that's totally fair. I'm happy to take it and be the guinea pig. But there's only 4 people on our team at that point, and between the 4 of us, there was 10 years of experience, so we had a lot to learn. Oops, too far. Okay, so the first thing we realized is we really needed a change. So the culture that was in place was we never spoke about errors. People got written up for them. It was hush hush and very shameful. Very shameful. Our training process was terrible. I had someone hand me a pricer and say, read this front to back. And then a week later they said, okay, here's your first project, go. They didn't teach me about CAD, anything about product. And like I said, I had no experience with anything. So that didn't really work for me. And then collaboration. We never talked to each other. We were heads forward at our computer. I didn't know what projects this person was working on. We never really helped each other out. I mean, we were friends and we talked, but project work was like individual. So we knew our issues, and we started our journey to creating a culture of accuracy. So the first couple things that we did, the biggest one was like the first real big change was the talking about our errors. So I created what I called a spec sec, a second for your specifications, of course, because I'm kitschy and drives everyone crazy, but hey. So what we would do is every design meeting is I would encourage people around the table to bring something that they learned in the past week or a mistake that they made, and share it with the whole group. And what we would do is we would bring all of those things that we learned or errors that we made, or even things that were caught on a double check that were wrong. Like, oh, I forgot to put this here because I didn't click the right button in CET or whatever. We share all of that in Bluescape, which is it's the Hayworth, it's a cloud-based collaborative system, so we all have access to it. And we can pull up that information constantly. So we've been doing this for 3.5 years now, so we have a ton of information there. It's a great resource. Always read the pricer. My team is so sick of hearing me say this, But anytime, especially if there's a new person, because I really try and drill it into their head, is if you ask a question and you haven't looked it up yet, I'm going to say, did you read the pricer? And if you read the pricer, then we'll talk about it and we can figure out what the problem is. But if you haven't read the pricer, I'm going to make you go read the pricer first. And then 9 times out of 10, you're going to answer your own question. And then you learn how to read pricers and get the love of it. I mean, I have a love of furniture and stuff like that. So, and then we're a team, so we have to act like a team. So we partner on projects now. We always have a backup designer, especially with those really big clients. And then when we have new people, we do a mentoring system. So someone that has experience mentors with someone that's new. So it takes a little bit of the burden off of the whole team of hiring someone new and that training portion. So it really helps that. And then so this is a picture of my team at Neocon a couple years ago. So I really encourage making personal relationships with the people on your team, because it helps you better understand each other and be more compassionate and help each other out. People on my team now are my actual best friends, so I'm very lucky. Okay, so some of the CET portions. So reusables and accuracy. So I don't know how many of you use reusable files. It was in the beginner course of CET and I took it to heart. So my DBI, I never used them before, so I created them and then forced my entire team to use them. And what it helps us do is we create all of our templates, our paper spaces, and can you still see my screen, Olivia? Am I making sure I'm sharing the right screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to check. Like last time my camera was blurry, so. Okay, so we have these reusable files, and like I said, it's back in your beginner CET training. It is extremely helpful. So we have everything in here. So for our paper spaces, we have everything saved so that every time it's pulled in, it's exactly accurate. And if there's something wrong with it, when someone pulls it in, they fix it and then save it back here so that the next time it's pulled out, it's already ready to go. So that helps with your accuracy, because then across the board, everything's where it needs to be. Audit your favorites. So I have a client that does a ton of the same thing over and over again. These itty bitty weird stations, and I can't stand them, but hey, it's what they wanted. So this whole piece right here is one favorite. So whenever I start a new drawing for that client, I bring this favorite in, because when we started this process with them, because they have a rule that it's a 2-day turnaround time for a quote and a drawing, and their floors can be up to 250 stations. So it's a lot of work, especially for accuracy. So what we did is we set these blocks up, gave them a very specific naming convention, and we double checked them. So, and made all the changes. So now, anytime I pull this in, I can place all of these blocks wherever they need to go, and I already know that they're accurate. Like here, like if there was a column in this spot, I'd be able to use this one because I know it's checked. And I've timed myself before, and I populated a floor of 250 stations in under an hour. And that included floor to ceiling walls, because we have all of these templates set up. And when we sifted out, there wasn't a single, we still checked it, of course, but there wasn't a single error. And then making favorites of building codes. So this one I did because I am admittedly terrible with my building codes. All my girls on my team give me a lot of crap for it. It's just never been my strong suit. So what I did, I was terrible about what side, push, pull, side of the door. I know, interior design 101, but so we made all of the ADA approach, like the door approaches, the hinge approach. My favorite is the, 5-foot turnaround ADA circle. We have this saying that DBI doesn't recommend this. So the nice thing with this is not only are we catching accuracy, because you can make specification errors, but you can also make errors when it comes to building codes and standards. we've got to a site before and go to install something, and if it doesn't meet code, the fire marshal's not going to give you occupancy. So if those things are consistent up front, it helps make it look, helps it along the way, makes it go faster. Also helps because all of our drawings look exactly the same. So our salesperson doesn't complain that one person did a drawing. They don't know, they know who did the drawing, but if I have someone help me on my project, they're not going to notice anything different because our drawings are going to look the same. And then saving client standards. So like I said, with that big client that we just won, which is lovely. So we've created CET favorites of every single one of their typicals. Again, already double checked so that when they come in, they're accurate. And one of the biggest things that we found is that because with the dealership world, there is just a ton of turnover, right? It's just a part of the business. And a lot of the errors were when you take this huge client that's been with one person for 15 years and you give to someone that's brand new, you miss things because you don't know what the standards were. So for our big clients, we come up with like the sign-off pages. So this will be the sign-off page for every single location. These match, they're very standard, so that's nice. It doesn't work for everyone, but so what we do if we have someone new working on one of these projects, I will send them this file and say, make sure that every single one of your pieces matches this. And we also have a CIF file of every single typical that's been double checked. So I've had, I actually use this as a training opportunity a lot because it's so standard. So if I'm training someone new, I have them populate all of it and then make them pull the information of, the double check CIFs and make sure they're checking their stuff. And it helps because they know where to go for the information and they're trying something that's, challenging rather than just reading a price report because that does not work. Okay. Oh, yes. Oops. The next thing we did. So we realized that our setup and how our team was sitting was not conducive to a collaborative environment. Like I said before, we were all faced away from each other. We didn't really, we talked at lunch and stuff, but we didn't talk about projects. So we made the big change, and it was not an easy, it was quite the argument in the fight to get us, well, and it's actually silly because here we were on the first floor and actually got to see daylight. We chose to move to the basement because we were so passionate about having this collaborative environment. So what we did was we reduced our station sizes, reduced our desk and storage so that we could add all of these collaborative spaces. And I cut it off, but there's collaborative spaces here and over here and over here. Because we wanted to encourage that environment and that excitement about the project and helping each other out. The other big thing for me was, so I sit here and I wanted to be able, and it's not like me being like creepy oversight mean guy, but I wanted to be able to see people's screens so that if they had a question on something, they can, turn the screen and say, hey, is this right? I'm having a problem, or like I'm having a problem with this in CET, or, and the other thing that was nice is that if I was just walking by and I saw something that looked kind of, I don't know, not right, files going into a walkway, something just looking weird, it allows me to spark that conversation of like, hey, what's going on here, so that when it comes to install, I don't get pulled in at that point. The other nice thing about this layout is that I would mentor these two people, like this person would mentor this person would mentor this person. So it would allow them to share screens and collaborate back and forth and just generally have a more open environment. What I liked about being so close to, and the fact that I'm kind of like hidden back here, is that anytime someone had to talk to me, they usually sit right here. And if they're asking questions, then the whole team's hearing it, which I think is really important because you learn from other people's mistakes. So if they're asking me weird things, that we're all helping out. it's really lovely now. We'll just kind of shout answers back and forth, and it's great. Oh, and I wanted to mention that I know that right now during COVID is not the time to ask your ownership or your CEO to invest in furniture. But if you are interested in that, on DBI's website, so I'll share the link when I share my my presentation. We actually did a project profile on this space, and there's testimonials from some of our design team, and what our process was, and how we sold it to our ownership. So watch that and maybe get some ideas. It's very helpful, and it's totally paid for itself. Okay, communication for dummies. So what we found was that after making these changes and stuff was improving, we were still having a ton of errors that were all communication based. It was that the client didn't know what they were asking for, the sales didn't know what they were giving us, and then design basically didn't have enough information, so we were just making educated guesses, like, well, this chair should probably have casters on it, when the client up at the meeting that we weren't at said, I don't want any casters. So things like that, we were still making just a ton of errors. And no one would own up to it either, because it's a communication error. Who's going to document that? So because nobody was giving us the information, we took it upon ourselves to be the one we were the holder of the information. So this is an example of one of the sign-offs that we would do. Now I will say that this one is a lot more complex than some of the other ones. This client wanted me to list out every single line. It was very time consuming and very overwhelming for this one, but that's fine. It's just the one. I can show you an example of what we normally do. So we have all of these saved in a folder, like I said, in our reusables, pay-per-view, and then all the different sizes. So this is what it looks like when we start, like when we pull it in. One of the things that I recommend is, because I'm very picky about all my stuff lining up and looking really clean, you can make groups out of these. So if you're in single select mode, it's hard to align these pieces, right? Because if you move this, you can't align it with that using the align tool. So if you go into multi-select mode, select, and it's actually already grouped, so I'll ungroup it, but if you select both, right click and hit group. You can't just click the G, because for some reason, like if you do your quick keys, for some reason that does not work. And then you're able to move this in all of these as one full piece. And you're able to change whatever, add your finishes in there. So that's really helpful. I actually just started doing that like a couple projects ago, and I'm like, what have I been doing my entire life? We also have like a setup sign-off block that's saved as well. So we can bring that into any drawing and say, okay, now this is an approval drawing. So to prove a point, this morning I created this sign-off from the template to this, and it took me 10 minutes. That's including pulling all of the finishes off of the manufacturer's websites, pulling images of the floor plan. And this is like a little trick that I do. I forgot to say this in my other sessions, but you know how sometimes when you have a key plan and it takes forever to reload and reload and reload? Well, what I will do is I will open up if I have a PDF of the overall page, I will take a screenshot of it and then put it in here so that your paper doesn't get stuck all the time reloading. So something about these I shared in my last one. There's a program called ShareX. If you Google it, it looks like this. And it is, I don't know how many of you use the snip tool, but I hate the snip tool in Microsoft. It's terrible. So I have mine set up that if I hit Control-Shift-C, this snipping tool will show up. And what's lovely about it is that you can take a snip of anything and mark it up and send it right away. So say I was talking to my salesperson and he said, get rid of the table. And I said, well, which table? And I can send this and hit OK. And then I can paste that right into a Teams message and say, get rid of this table, you mean? I've done this with clients before too, where if they're trying to point something out or I'm trying to point something out, saying, okay, right here is this issue. So it helps you move through the drawing faster without having to produce an entire new PDF every time. It helps with communicating with sales to point stuff out. But the reason I was showing you that tool is I use it to get finishes. So say this is from a manufacturer website. I copy that, hit the check button, click there, and hit paste. Oops, just kidding. Oh, it's because I'm hitting the wrong button. It helps if you actually hit the right button. So then it will paste it in there. Yeah. Usually you try and make it square, not lazy like I just did. But highly recommend that program. Very helpful. Let's see. Okay, so I wanted to show, so kind of your checklist for, oh, just too much. Sorry, friends. So your checklist for your sign-offs, rendering, description, finish, dimensions, and then part number, and if it's optional is part number, bid ID number, and quantity. And I will point out that I totally failed to put my dimensions in here, so I'm bad. But that is, those are your basics. I also I went over the group tool. I did not go over the position tool. So something that's helpful with organizing these, so I'll show you a kind of a crazy one that I did. This one did take some time, I will be honest. But the architect picked all the finishes and did not really communicate them well. I mean, they picked 4 different colors for, all 4 of these chairs in this conference room are different colors. I don't know why. So because they picked finishes so quickly and then just kind of left me in a pile of, 1,000 finishes, and there's so many different chairs. I mean, in this project, there is 6 different, and this is a very small area. There's 6 different typicals, 3 different task chairs, 3 different side chairs, because it's a pilot space. So there's just so many different things going on. And I wasn't even confident that the architect knew what they had picked on everything. So I made this sign-off sheet so that they knew, the client knew, they knew exactly what they were getting. And I made these product lineups so that they could see, in this area, they wanted all 5 chairs to be blue except for 1. Well, that's pretty hard to see if you don't have it lined up. I know I wouldn't have looked at this rendering and been like, oh, that chair's the wrong color, because it's small. But here I was able to write out that's what they wanted. I will say this one took me more time, but that's only because of the vast complexity and that they wanted 30 different types of chairs, 30 different types of everything. So, but one thing that's very helpful when you do that is say on this one, I was trying to move all of these finishes to one spot. So you could actually group all of these and it'll help you move all of them together. So it'll help you align things. The other tool that I don't think people use very often, and it is my favorite thing in the world now, is the position tool. And I didn't use it when I first started because it used to suck. I apologize for my words. It used to be really glitchy. When you move things, it would crash my drawing. But now it just works beautifully. I use this tool pretty much more than I use anything else. So it helps with the accuracy of getting your stuff in the right spot. So if this pen, what I used to do is I felt like I was constantly going like this, trying to get it, if I was trying to get it to the edge. But I have it for a quick key for R. So it's right next to my basically my hand. And it grabs the edge and I can put it right there. It's so helpful, especially like if a client has, or you're working with an architect and they have a specific distance they want here. Well, you can put that there and then move your whole station piece out to that distance. And it'll help separate your stuff and line things up. So it's just lovely. Highly recommend the position tool. I can't believe I didn't use it more in the past 3 years. Okay, where are we at? Sorry if I'm running through things. I ran out of time last time. I don't want to run out of time to answer your guys' questions. Okay, speaking of not having enough time, the biggest pushback that I get when I bring up this topic is that I don't have enough time to do that. And I'm going to push back on you and tell you that yes, you do. So I've timed myself on a lot of these, and typically a normal, average, medium-sized project this will add a half hour to an hour to your overall, project timeline. And one thing, like some of the questions that I got last time that were just wonderful were people asking, well, how do I, with all these double checks and these sign-offs and sales is pushing, and they're saying, well, why is it, I don't have time for a second check. I highly recommend that you remove sales from your design process. We had a really hard time with that. Sales used to act like they were our boss. In fact, the sales manager was my boss, so that was very difficult. He's not my boss anymore, and we get along wonderfully. He's my favorite salesperson, but it's hard to have the salesperson be like that driving force. So we removed sales from our design process. So we don't give them too much information. I tell them that it'll be done on Thursday, and they'll have their quote on Thursday. They don't need to know what you do between now and Thursday. All they need to know is that they're going to get it on Thursday. And then you build into your timeline, okay, I know I have to make sign-offs. I know I have to do a first check. I know I have to do a double check. That's just a part of the process, and nothing can vary from it. And it's hard for them to push back and say that something's not important if they don't know where you're at in the process. Just say, I'm close. No matter what, you'll have it by Thursday. So one thing and another thing to help sell the idea of this extra time that goes into these sign-offs, just this year alone, by using our sign-offs as backup, my team has saved $17,335 from a time that a client or a salesperson said, that came in wrong, that's not what I wanted, you spec'd this wrong. And then I pull out my little sign off and I said, actually, this is what we agreed on. You can see right here in my notes that this is exactly what I told you were getting. And if you didn't look at it, that's not my fault. It doesn't come out of, that's not a me error, that's a you error. Just can't make people read things, but you sure can try. But and someone asked another question about how long it took to really kind of implement this change. I would say it took about 6 months for the sales people to really, back up and kind of start to see the benefit. I had one of my most veteran salespeople tell me that he's never had as many jobs as he has now go punch free, where his client gets to move in the next day and we don't have to come back in 3 weeks when the right product arrives. And they're also noticing it because they're making a lot more money. Because stuff's not wrong. They don't have any more profit erosion of install having to go back out or paying for incorrect product. It's as soon as they see it, they love it. Okay. So along with that time piece, you want to work smarter, not harder. So a lot of people are like, these drawings have so much detail, I don't have time to do that for every project. Well, what we started doing is we would use one drawing from the beginning of the process to the end. So we would set the drawing up like this and have the we will attach that to the quote when we send it to the client for order. We'll send that to them when we, say this is everything you want, this is what we're going to quote. Then we use this drawing for our audit drawings, and we'll just turn the part numbers on. We use these as our approval drawings, which get attached to the quote and sent to the client. So when they sign off on the quote, they sign off on what they're getting. And then we also use these for install drawings because a lot of our installers, they hate SIF files. They don't want to read part numbers. And even if they do read part numbers, they, those finish codes on there, they don't know that, the color horizon or whatever, they don't know that that means that's going to be green. They just know the name of it. But if you have a rendering here and this chair comes in green, they're gonna be like, okay, that came in wrong. It's very evident. Or like that other project that I was showing you, if the guys unpacked one chair out of this 5, or out of the 6 that was gray and the rest are blue, they're gonna say that's the wrong color. And I would also have said that if I were them, but because I have my sign off, they'll be like, oh, okay, we went over this. There's supposed to be one that's a weird color. And then not only doing this, reducing the number of paper spaces will speed up your drawing, but it'll get, it gets your projects out the door faster. So you do the work up front, and then you just send it on your way, and you have more time to work on the next project rather than spending a ton of time doing install drawings. Okay, into the audits for QA QC. So my best practices are always checking your CET article views first. This will help make sure that you have the correct product filtered out and that the right product hits your SIF file. So what I'll do is I'll put my article views up on this page and my drawing on this page, and I will just go down the line and make sure that everything's in there and that all the finishes are applied correctly. Then do my SIF out and make sure that that's all in line. We do all of our audits digitally, with the exception if they are, if you're looking at a 36 by 48 sheet of paper, then obviously you can print that out. But COVID kind of forced us into this digital double check piece. And I will show you a tip on how to do that. Always have eyes on a change, no matter how small. Even if it's a single line item change, what I'll do is I'll either have someone come, like one of the designers come look at my screen, the one that did the original double check if I'm changing something, or I'll send it to them in Teams, and I'll just send a screenshot and say, hey, can you just take a look at this and make sure I didn't mess something up? We've had a lot of errors of people thinking that they could just change one line. And again, beating the dead horse. If you don't know the part number, look it up in the pre-script. Something else that we use to help CYA is revision history. So revision history is a free extension in the CET marketplace, and it allows you to add notes. It adds the date for you, and it says who it's drawn by. So you can go back, like as you see, I had help from some other people on this, and I'm able to track when that happened. The one thing I will say is that if you have a paper space like this, like your templates, everybody in your department has to have that extension, otherwise it'll error out. Okay, the other thing that I like to do is that if it's a small project, I add my article view to the page. So then that acts as your entire, your install drawing, as well as your audit paperwork, as well as, communicating with sales for what you have. So the biggest thing is getting those to fit on the page is very hard. So I changed my article view visibility columns down to just quantity, part number, and description. Add the article view in, and then once it's in there, you kind of mess with these until it looks right. So I just double clicked on that to help it reload. And it's going to take its time, of course. But so the way that you draw it in here is this button right here where it says article view. You just draw it. And then the top part is you get to pick which view you're looking at. So I have this filter, I have this piece tagged as the sofa. And this is going to, oh, don't. There we go. So I have this tag for sofa, and then have it in the order with, like I said, quantity, part number, description. And so when you kind of mess around with these, I always like the standard view because I think it's helpful to see like the gray white. A lot of times it'll go to multiple line text and it'll show up really small like that. So I get rid of that one. And then that one does nothing, but the fit content is the other one that's kind of a bummer. So if you have that unchecked, you have to, it just gets all jumbled. So fit content basically makes it the size that it needs to, like makes it closer to the size of the box. So this is really helpful because if you have really well-versed clients, there's been times that I will get rid of the part number and just do quantity and description. and they'll say, okay, you're getting one pip table. It's 26 inches high. It's a hard glide. You know, it depends on your manufacturer. If they have really good descriptions, like this stuff for Hayworth, they do a really great job with the ancillary pieces. But if you're looking at like panels and panel part numbers and stuff like that, nobody knows what that is. But for collaborative stuff, it's helpful so you don't have to type all this stuff out. Okay. Sorry, I'm talking really fast because I want to make sure I have time for your questions. I'm already running out.
We do have 20 minutes left, so.
Okay. Okay, 20 minutes left. I thought we only had 10. I was about to freak out. Okay, sweet. So just a couple more of my best practices. Always use CET. We never use CAD for specifying anything. Do building shells and that's it. I outlawed CAD in my department about 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago. And it was like one of the greatest days of my life. I thought I was gonna die on that mountain, but our projects there's so much in CAD that can go wrong, and you spend so much extra time, you know, F2ing lines and adding finishes, and even with the finish tables, it takes forever. So what we started doing is if we had big, huge clients that were all in CAD, every time that they did a reconfigure, we would just chip away at it, you know. Or if we had, and I know a lot of people don't have their interns anymore, we would have interns rebuild it as a training exercise, and then we just check it. Always render from your drawing. This sounds like kind of annoying, but I always like rendering from my drawing rather than like pulling an old typical rendering out from something, because then I know that what the rendering is showing is what's actually in my drawing. Do everything make sure that your drawing has everything in it. Don't add anything at the SIF level. So you're going to want to add pick lists. So a little pick list trick that I have for you. I always use the project symbols pick list, not the manufacturer specific one, because this one has a lot of options. So if you double click on this, so say that there's pieces that don't have they're not in project symbols, and it's like, say you want like an IKEA sofa or whatever. You can either put that on put it on its own SIF file, or if you have like certain things that always go with one of your projects. So let me show you this. So I just clicked on a SIF file. I did that really fast, I'm sorry. So I hit import SIF, and then I selected a SIF file. And what it will do, obviously this one's not very applicable because it's like for stations, but it will add everything from the SIF file to your drawing, which is helpful if you have for this pick list, this is a human scale table. There's a very special heavy duty cylinder that's not in the price list, and it's not in project spec. And so we have to manually enter it. Well, I can manually enter it here and it'll SIF out. So at least the quantities are right. We do it with specials sometimes too, if they're not available, but it'll help us, helps you add stuff that way. Okay. And then always validate your projects. Most all manufacturers have a validate button. People forget that a lot. It's just a really quick way to do it, to check your stuff. Okay, my tips on digital spec checks. Roll up my sleeves for this. I rushed through this one last time so fast, so I apologize. I just really want to have time for your questions. Okay, so what I do is I have my SIF file set up. I have my drawing here, and then this is the little friend that is really helpful. So if you hit edit and advanced search, this will come up. So what this does is it will find, and it only works for the document that you're clicked on, right? So I'm sorry, I don't have COVID, I promise. So say I'm looking for panel type AN. So like it's on my SIF file, and I always start with my SIF file. So I see my panel type, it's 6630 AN. You gotta select this one, make sure you're on it. So I hit advanced search, and it found 2 instances. Oh, looks like one instance. So it will highlight it here. And see, I'm wrong. There is 2 of them. Maybe I'm blind. Well, it's saying that there's 2 of them, so that's very interesting. Maybe I'm blind. Maybe you guys can see it. I've been staring at this stuff too long today. Oh, it's because it's right there and I'm blind. Thank you, friends. How many of you are yelling at me? So you can toggle back and forth. Yes, I understand. So you can toggle back and forth between these, and like if you have a really long list of them, you can actually click all the way through and see where all of them are and highlight them, and that's how you count them. So it will actually say 2 instances within this drawing, and I don't rely on this completely, but if this number matches up with this number, I still count all of them, but I feel better about it. If it doesn't match up, then I know I have a problem. So that is how I like to do these. These are very helpful too. So the other quick, without clicking on it, because if you're over here looking at stuff, if you hit Control G, it'll automatically bump you to the next one. So I know you can't see my hands, but it's Control G will bump you down to the next one. So if you go through, and it'll take you all the way around your drawing and help you find all of those. I know a lot of people out there are screaming you should just use Bluebeam. I know, I've begged for it. They won't let me have it. But for those of you that don't have Bluebeam, you can make it happen even with PDF. Okay, where are we? Is it my favorite section yet? Yes, it is. It's my favorite section. Okay. So now you're a badass. Now what? You've followed all the steps, you reduced all your errors, but how does it benefit you? Because at the end of the day, we are a little selfish. It's okay. We're supposed to be. So first and foremost, make a spreadsheet, track your stuff, track everything. So I track every project specified in cost and then the errors in cost. At the end of the year, I tally it up and I give a report to my manager and to my CEO. Then at the same time, I set goals for the next year based on our numbers. During that meeting, I, make it sound really fancy and be like, this year, by reducing our errors, our team has saved the company this amount of dollars, which means more to your bottom line. CEOs like those kind of words. So as an example, so this is like the spreadsheet that I keep. I hid the client names in these ones. So project, usually have the client name and what it is, who the salesperson is, who the designer is. I track billable design time just because that's kind of like a me thing to make sure that all the hours are getting billed for, because there was a big problem for a while where there wasn't. And remember at the beginning when I said that I had the biggest errors out of anyone, this is the error that where I conceded and I took half of it, even though it totally wasn't my fault, because on the sign off, I put the sign off on there and there was a certain type of tower on there and that's what we ordered. And then my salesperson's like, well, I didn't want that tower. They wanted a different tower. I said, well, you and the client agreed to this, but I was kind and I took half that error. But this is how we track all of it. So at the end of the year, I tally all of it up and see what our errors were for the entire year. And it's a really good way, and it's a cool way to track, how much did you specify this year? Each one of my designers, I look at what their numbers are and I'm like, hey, you did this much better than you did last year. You did this many more projects than you did last year. And then you take those numbers and you ask for a raise. You proved it, you save the company money, and you deserve a raise. And I highly recommend when you go and ask for that raise, ask for a specific number. This is something that I found that a lot of the girls that were on my team, they're people pleasers. They're just great people, but it's hard to go out there and ask for a big number, but just do it. Just do it. If you ask for a raise and they give you 50 cents, you're like, oh, I wanted more. Okay, so big reveal. So when we started this process in 2016, so this is obviously it's 2017. So in 2016, we had $53,000 in errors. Last year, we had $430. And mind you, our sales have from 2016 to 2019, our sales have increased by, I think, 4 million per year. And we have a smaller team with less experience. So very, very proud of my team. Could not do this without them. And you got this. Okay, let's answer your questions. Okay, let me start. I can't ever tell if I want to start at the top. Oh, they just kind of all come in random orders. Okay, so what do you say when you, what do you mean when you say you remove sales from the process? A lot of the time, sales is the driver. They're saying, I need this project. I need it right now. Where's this at? Why does it need a double check? Things like that. I'm not removing them from the whole process. I'm removing them from the design process. So sales is no longer allowed to say, oh, we don't need to go measure the site on this one. It's fine. I checked it. Oh, I don't need this is just a budget quote. I don't need a check on it. They don't get to make those calls. If I don't get to set what their margins are, they don't get to tell me how to design. They can make recommendations. And if my girls don't feel comfortable standing up to that, I step in and say, hey, you know what? This is our process. We do it for a reason. We do it to save you money. We do it to be accurate. And we do it for our clients at the end of the day so that their stuff's right and we're not wasting their time or their money. By removing sales, did your design team take on programming and communication with the client? I'd like to hear that's balanced. So we actually didn't. So we only do programming when it's for very, very large clients. For the most part, our salespeople are the main contact with the client. So they send all the information, which is actually why the sign-offs and things like that are even more important, is because we don't get to talk to the client. And depending on your salesperson, if they take terrible notes or not, we take whatever they said and put it on paper and then they share it with the client. The client's like, okay, I like that, or that's not at all what we talked about. And if it's not at all what they talked about, then the salesperson was missing something. So it actually works out really well because now sales has to provide us even more information. And a lot of the time we won't even give them a drawing unless we have all the information we need. Which figures do you use to determine your personal accuracy percentage? So like I said, with that spreadsheet, I take everything that I've specified in cost. Every single project, when I archive it, I put it in my spreadsheet for every single one of my girls. And then every time I have an error, after we talk about it as a team and go over what happened, how we could have fixed it, I tally all of those up and then create a percentage out of it. Curious how COVID and work from home has impacted how your team work together. Are you all back in the office full time? So we actually went back to the office faster than anyone else around us. But I think it helped improve our communication, specifically with sales, because before they would just take papers and crappy notes and just leave them on our desk and say, see me if you have questions. And then they would never see us and never talk to us about it. And just, so now when they come and bring us something, they have to have everything together. They can't just drop something on our desk. They have to schedule a meeting. They have to talk about it. And it helps us actually get better information. And we are technically back in the office full time. Some of us are still working from home 1 or 2 days. With working from home being the norm, how do you maintain the collaboration aspect of your team? What are some ways you maintain accuracy while doing spec checks remotely? Do you find that it's any different than being in the office? So when we were all at home, it was kind of a struggle. Something that we did to just kind of keep everybody's morale up, we would do like a virtual happy hour, or we would go to, we actually have one scheduled where we're going to go out to a park and we're going to play trivia so that we can, social distance and all that stuff. But there's like just fun ways to, still get together. And maintaining the accuracy is actually easier because now we use Microsoft Teams, and if I'm doing a double check, I can type the question right away and say, like, are you sure you wanted to do this? So what are your typical favorites for construction permit notes? I saw you had a push and pull, but I didn't see others. So we don't really run into them a ton, more so than, files going back to back, or sorry, I'll get Leslie Knope off the background because she's kind of distracting. So we have it's mainly just like clearances and ADA and fire code. So we have push pull, ADA circle, lateral files facing each other. So I mean, we don't really do. I mean, we do a lot of private offices where people like to break the rules and stuff like that, but not much else. What's the difference between the position and the move tool? So I don't know what the move tool is. So position, what I like about position is that it grabs something from a very specific point. So say I had a dimension that I needed this panel. Oops, shoot. This panel signed up to. So I hit the position tool, which is on my, so I can hit the end, the middle, or the end. And if I want to snap it right to this dimension string, it'll snap right there. It's super helpful. What was happening before is like with this, well, that one's a bad example, but anything that didn't snap into place, like something that was, something that was like mobile, I always wanted everything to be like super lined up and accurate. And it drove me crazy trying to like if I got it like here, and then I would just inch it, or sometimes it would like end up going over the CAD plan a little bit, and then my codes were off. So position tool is a lifesaver. I would love to know how you quantify the spec errors, percentage rates, keep track of design time, and if you figured out averages on how long a project should take. That's a great question. It's actually something I'm working on about, and it's very hard to put a number on it. So what I do as kind of a helping through the process is when I get a design request and I look at the what's requested, I say, I think this would, with 2 revisions and white sweep renderings, I would think this would take 4 or 5 hours. And I give that as a heads up. And if it starts getting past that, we have to have another conversation about where's the communication going wrong? Is it just the client that wants more detail? What's the issue? There's something else I was going to add. And if I think about it, I'll come back to it.
We do have about 5 minutes left for a couple more questions.
Okay, thank you. What happens when a manufacturer discontinues items that's not populating your drawing anymore because it's no longer in CET, especially after you've created these favorites? Fabulous question. So say that, now this is for freestanding pieces only. If you're talking about pieces and parts inside panels, that's totally different thing. But say that this pedestal is discontinued. What I would do is I would go to another manufacturer. Okay, let's pretend that this is a pedestal because I don't have time to find one. So let's pretend that's a pedestal, right? And I want to attach this data to this pedestal. If you go to the mesh, graphic meshes, and you make this fella graphics only, and you right click, down here it says add catalog info. This is one of my favorite things. If you go to freeform, so I added something in one of the other sessions. So I can come in and I'll take that part number, so JPNJ-24-S2. Okay, and you can add a description, pricing, everything. I will add that to this piece. I will close out. And if I sift this out, it would have that part number. Obviously, I picked something that's comparable in size, but for the sake of time. It does not, wait. Oh, I just answered that one. Can you repeat the snip tool and what it's called and where to download it from? It's called ShareX. And I just Googled it. It looks like this little, little Google colored, I don't know what that looks like, but it looks like that. And I love it. Use it for everything. Life changer. What program do I use to mark up digitally? Adobe PDF, sadly. I wish I had Bluebeam, but one can wish. How long did this whole process take? From the 18 people leaving in 4 years, what is your company at? What is your company at now? So We have two separate design teams because we hold the state of Michigan contract. So we have a contract team and then we have a private sector team. So I just manage the private sector team, and that's where those numbers are being pulled from. Originally we had, like I said, 13 people and it was half and half. So we had 8 people on our team. Right now we're currently down to 3 on the private sector team. We have had some furloughs and layoffs, unfortunately, but we're still rocking the process. And it's let me tell you, those numbers mean more now than they ever have. And how long did the process take? We really hit our stride probably about a year and a half ago. It was about, I would say, about a year and a half into the process. It really, and I'll just be honest, when the sales manager was our manager, he really fought us on it because he was used to being in control. When he stopped being our manager, and he just became, a salesperson, the process went a lot faster because he was very accepting, and our new manager, she was very supportive of it. So that was a huge help. How do you highlight in color in PDF? Once you, oh shoot, I forgot to show this. So you have to customize your comment toolbar. So if you right click on that top bar, yes. If you right click on the top bar, you can hit customize comment tools. And I always put those at the very front. So if you click on the highlighter, you can click on this button and change the colors.
You probably have time for one more question.
Okay. Easiest way to convert to CAD to CET, just rebuild it all the way around. I hate using the convert tool. Our normal turnaround time is 2 days for a drawing and a quote. Yes, so when we're doing our spec checks, we're actually checking our install drawings, which is helpful because then everything's accurate. Okay, I'm done.
All right. That puts us at 4:50. Oh, thank you. No, it was great squeezing them in. Well, thank you, everyone who joined us this afternoon, and thank you, Cindy, for all the great tips. Just a quick reminder that you can earn a CEU for attending this session. Just be sure to go over to the CT Experience briefcase to download the drawing for logging your CEUs. And to get credit, make sure you grab my initial. I'm Olivia Adams, so my initials are OA. Be sure to plug those into the drawing of the initial field there. And just make sure you don't resize those initial images. But again, thank you, Cindy, today. It was great having all of you. Great questions.
Yes, thank you, guys. If you ever need anything, just reach out. I'm always happy to help. Bye.
Hi, everyone. And be sure to head over to the final Q&A in the main hall for some closing content for day 1.